Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business, we approve the minutes. Got a motion by Jim, second by Christie. All in favor say aye. And we're ready for the retirement plan, so Paul, we'll let you take off.
All right, I'm going to pull this down just.
Yep.
We're fine.
So the first place that I want to do is introduce partners. Chris Lindler is the administrative side. You may remember Don McGee used to come up. Don McGee's no longer with the bank. That has been a smooth transition that probably took place over 8 months ago, 6 months ago. So on the administrative side, Chris Lindler. I will be rolling off. I've been with you for 8 years. Where they use me is private wealth with individuals. Jay Mullins is an institutional portfolio manager and will be taking over my role. I'm still with Regions. They just, with Dawn leaving, decided to bring in a 100% institutional team. You're in good hands, even on the institutional side. You've hired Regions. You never hired me. You hired a process. The process is going to be exactly the same. You're in good hands. Tim, Kathy still have my direct dial number, know how to get in touch with me. I'm still around. So just by way of a little history that we've already talked about, but we're going to look at some performance, but I just want to go over where we are with the asset allocation. That prior to 2014 August, you were 70% bonds and 30% stocks. At this point, we would be 50-50. And you can see that equity stocks 42%, fixed income or bonds 37%. And then we've got this alternative investment area. But there's your 40-40-20. That gets us to 100. And that alternative investment, 10% of that is bond replacement, 10% of that is fixed income replacements. Let's go over the performance real quick. Let's jump up. Down. Your up is my down. So overall, since we made this move to go balanced, you're at about 5.31. The benchmark that we should be benchmarking that to is what your actuary says you need, which is 5.5. So we are within the grasp of what your actuarial says you need. The next thing that I want to point out is going back to those asset classes. You've got equity or stocks, and you can see, and let's just concentrate on
You need
this
a pointer.
one-year
You
period.
know a pointer?
Pardon?
Laser pointer?
Yeah, that would be great. We forgot to do that. All right, good deal.
It works, but go to the end of it.
Okay. So what I want to do is just concentrate on the one-year number or the last 12 months. That equity or stock asset class has returned 18%. The bond asset class, 6.74. And then the DS, which under normal times should be between the two, but fixed income has been very unusual in this past 12 months because they reduced interest rates, bond prices went up. So that the real return there should be about 3%, but you're getting a 3% price benefit from the interest rates going down. I'm still disappointed with the DS asset class because even when we look long term, that 1.27, I would expect it to be closer to 5. I want it to be in between the stocks and the bonds. And so in a minute, that's an area that we should be looking at as to whether or not it's adding value or not. But again, one of the things that we get into discussion with this group is, how do we get more return out of it? And I want to point out that the stocks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, that's a 17%, 18% return over the last 12 months, 8.65. Bonds, lower but more stable return. If we want to get up to that 5.5, either we need more time or we need more stock exposure. I think you're in a good place right now today, and I would tell you not to do any changes right now going into the presidential election cycle. Now, Tim, if you'll take it in the direction so that we can see this growth. One of the other things that we always try and do with some of your performance reporting is try to make sure I'm not getting credit, Regions isn't getting credit for money you've put into the plan. So this is a great report to see that, because the gray line, and my hand is shaky.
The bottom line. The bottom line.
The bottom line, the gray line, is dollars in, dollars out. That's a very steady line. And you can see when you put in the 1.5 million. And I took my time to get that invested over about 6 months. And so that's that little incline there. But the green line is what the market has added in addition to the dollars you've given us to work. So I think that's a real effective slide. Now you can see when we had the COVID, when COVID came out, so March of 2020, that 20-30% decline in the stock market, you still felt it. But since you've been invested for a long time, you never actually even lost money that you put in. You only lost the bank's money, or the house's money is what I'm trying to say, not the bank's money. All right. So, and with the recovery, we're doing great. Let me stop there. That's very high level. I'm trying to keep it 15 minutes. Any questions on any of that? The asset allocation, the return, dollars in, dollars out. All right. So one of the other things that Tim asked me to just sort of be prepared in is to sort of look forward. And I think two things are sort of on the table. Number one, we're going into a presidential election cycle. We obviously feel like volatility is going to increase. If you wanted me to look into a crystal ball and tell you what's going to happen,
You'd be wrong.
we haven't even had the first presidential debate. That's coming out. And I tell you what, I'll send to you, we are having on October the 12th, the investment committee is going to do something on their expectation of the market with the election. So I'll send that to you, and you're more than welcome to send it out to everybody on the board so they
I
can
will.
listen.
I will.
And it's really great. It's the chief economist of the bank, the chief investment advisor, and then a couple of the people who run stock strategies and bond strategies. So it's a really great group to listen to what they're expecting and what they may be thinking. And again, they're doing it on purpose in another couple of weeks. They want to see that this first debate. Glad.
Come in there.
So what I will do is give you a little bit of just an optimist viewpoint, which is we have seen great stock markets under both Republican, Ronald Reagan years, and then Democrat, Bill Clinton years. So it's not necessarily, the market likes to know what's going on in consistency. And as soon as the market can see that, I think things will settle out. But obviously, we've got some things that are challenging, and I'm about to turn it over to Jay. Regardless, there's been so much money pumped out into the economy that you're going to have to raise taxes. And I'm sorry to say that, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I think you're going to see some sort of tax rise in the future. And so, what scares me about that, gets me concerned about that, is people will start trying to lock in these gains at a 20% capital gains rate instead of waiting to a 28%. So if you see a Biden win, I think you may see a market sell-off where people are assuming that that capital gains rate is going to go up. It's not going to affect you. You're not a taxpayer. And again, I think we have a conservative enough allocation here at 50% bonds and 50% stocks with the DS. In that DS, if we were to look at it for March, added value. You don't quite see it in the longer term numbers because it does really well with shocks to the system. So I think what my recommendation is, let's hold our course, but at some point look for an opportunity to possibly move from 50-50 to 65-35 using that DS, that alternative investment asset class, to fund that stock exposure. And if you were to get a 20% correction on the stock market, that's the time to do it. Any questions from me? And then I'll just sort of see, Jay, if he wanted to add to anything on the election or to the alternative investment DS asset class.
Well, what I would say, number one, I'm looking forward to working out with all of you, and you're going to hear this voice the next time. What I would say on the DS is it's done exactly what it's supposed to do. It sets rates. It's not going to go up too much. It's going to go down too much. The effect that it had in March was exactly, as Paul just mentioned, exactly what it was supposed to do. And so that was good. What it didn't do is keep up with the exceptional equities markets that we've had in 2019, and then miraculously, I will say, have had so far in 2020. And so with that, the DS, it's an interesting portfolio. I'm not going to bore you with those details here. We certainly don't have time for them, but I can do that at some point when we really think about maybe moving out of them. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how they're built and why they do what they do. Just looking forward, though, we are not seeing, and Chris, have you got what I'd like to provide this group with is that number for the client call. I don't know if you've been exposed to that. There's one on Friday at 11 o'clock, which Regions has had every Friday. I don't know if you've been in touch with that.
I've got it.
The people who Paul just named are on every one of those calls, and they are, believe me, I watch Bloomberg News and CNBC all day long, and those people are just as sharp as anybody would see on those broadcasts. And so I would commend that to you. They've gotten it down to 15, 20 minutes. It's not a long call, but you can hear exactly what Regions is thinking, and it's good thinking. The recovery is slowing. We're watching jobs. Jobs are going to drive really how we feel as a country coming out of this. Here we went into all of this with at the most 3% unemployment, actually probably less than that, and now we're going to settle in probably about 10 when this is all over. Will that be enough to really lag us down? How much of this the hangover will be there? We don't have a crystal ball, but we know that businesses are failing, starting to fail. Some of that will happen. We know that. Right now, manufacturing is already back. Those factories are running. What's not running right now is obviously the service industries. And so that's where all of that 10% is. And it's unfortunate too, most of that 10% is unemployment under lower wage earners as well. Those of us who work with computers, we went home, still work. What we're seeing with Biden, he's going to be somewhat of a more moderate approach to things. When he talks about 28%, if the Dems don't get the Senate, that'll probably be more like 24%. And so much will be muted if the Republicans hold the Senate. And this week, this first debate might give us some pretty good numbers. However, the pollsters will remind us Trump versus Clinton 4 years ago looked exactly the same as it does right now. It didn't give Trump a chance. But as I say, we've been here before. So that throws that much more uncertainty into the markets, which they don't like. So with what we know is going to happen, though, is under a Biden presidency would be more regulations, much worse on financials, financial banks, all of us, in investments as well. Higher taxes, more globalization. That means that companies are going to start looking and spreading dollars overseas, probably to make some more money over there. So globalization will get a restart. Trump has brought a lot of that back home. Well, you might see the companies going right back in the other directions. And so that's would be happening. You're going to see bigger government in lots and lots of places, but not so far as nationalization. Some of the more left wing of the Democratic Party would probably have gone down some of those roads, but not Biden-Harris. That other little variable in there. Hope Biden sticks around if he wins. Kamala Harris would have a hope. Then we really don't know what would happen. That's more of an unknown quantity. But those are really the things that we're watching. As you watch the employment, and you're going to see how the economy is doing. That's what we are doing, and holding our breath here for the elections to see which way it goes. And like I said, not only the presidential election, but that Senate vote is going to be a really important thing too. And yeah, that's about all I've mentioned. The call on Friday goes into some more detail as to why we think those things.
Give that number, I'd love to hear.
I will send that, and the election one is a special one of those calls, but I'll make sure I'll get it to the two of you, and you guys are welcome to distribute that. In closing, the one other thing that I just want to say now, remember, we have a 50-50 allocation, but based on our research, we will move that up to 60-40 either way. So if we start thinking that we need to reduce stock exposure, we will take that to 60% bonds, 40% stocks in order to protect some of those gains you've earned.
With the unemployment number going up though, what do you think bonds would be better, safer, or?
That is a great question. And again, what we talked about years ago, back in 2014, was long-term, we had been at the very end of a bull market for bonds, meaning rates had gone up, bond prices, other way around.
Yeah.
Rates had gone down, bond prices had gone up. We weren't expecting that we were going to need additional rate accommodation, but look what it does for your bonds just in the past year. That's not a bond return. So the thing is, we would use that as just a short-term tactical move. It wouldn't be a long-term. The neutral position is 50-50.
Okay.
And, now, up until October of, no. I was going to say, this was in 2019. We were overweight stocks, and we pulled that off and went neutral for the rest of 2019. So when we went into COVID, we were actually neutral. It was hard to see what COVID was doing. It didn't come through economic indicators. It came from without the system, outside of the system, as a pandemic. We could sit here and say it was hidden by China, whatever. It took us by surprise. You didn't see that coming as you do unemployment.
I would only add, in talking just briefly beforehand, Tim, thinking this group is in a really good position. I've very rarely run into a plan this healthy. Great funding status. You're sitting in the catbird seat. You can plan for a very long term, and yes, it bothers everybody when the market goes down. But this plan is in great shape to weather all of that. And between the stock and bond allocation, we can figure that out together where we're comfortable. But know that we're in a really good position to be considering these things. So congratulations, y'all done a great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
We thank you all.
You're welcome to stay. You're right to stay another 4 hours. You like to.
No, I've enjoyed the relationship.
Thank you, it was nice meeting y'all.
And, good to meet y'all. We'll see.
Send those that number to me and also
That's
your
right, I
information.
remember that.
I'll forward it, send a Kathy and I both, we'll forward it to everyone.
Okay.
You got it?
Thank you for your update.
Thank you.
Bye, have a safe trip.
Okay, y'all have a great week. Thank you.
She didn't take your coffee cup.
Oh, well, that's okay. She can keep a souvenir.
If she wants a souvenir, then yeah.
It's a barbecue fest.
All right, so we're ready for, financials.
What I'd like to do, since we have 2 months here, is cover both the July and August TVA report, and then the July and August budget, and then approve both of it at the end of it. If we look at if we look at the July TVA report, second green page, it shows our net income, which I have on the board here. Net income for July was $25,000 compared to last July at $71,000. Of course, year to date's the same since it's the first reported month. And then if we look at the operating statistics, revenue less power costs this month was $320,000. Last year, about $1,000 more. We're kind of trending like we did as far as revenue less power costs. Sales trended upward somewhat, residential class, because it was 15% warmer this August compared to last, this July compared to last. 603 cooling degree days versus 523. 1.5% total increase in sales over last year. But all of a sudden you get a 5% increase in purchases. So what happened there? It should be pretty close. Again, it gets back down to our losses. Last year our loss was 376,000 kilowatt hours. This year's a million kilowatt hours more. And again, it gets back to our billing cycles. And we'll see that when we look at next month's July. Almost 5% losses right here. Everything else was pretty straightforward. Any questions about July TVA? If not, we'll go to August TVA. And we'll see a repeat of the same. In August, our net income, the bottom of the second green page, was $25,864. Last August was $3,600. Year to date, we're at $51,000. Last year, we were $75,000. If you look at our operating statistics on page 3, revenue less power cost was $252. Last year was $270,000. So this August, we had a total of year-to-date $362,000, which is about, about 80,000 more than year-to-date last year. And a lot of that's driven again, see our losses corrected in sales this month compared to last. And they're actually higher last year, the reason those numbers are relevant. Sales went down a little bit in residential. There again, it was cooler in August than it was last August. The drive here on this minus 9.3, that includes a large commercial. No, I'm sorry, the small commercial, less than 50. And I don't know if that's still a hangover from the COVID, some of the smaller mom and pops shutting down or not being active. I can't explain that. I mean, we read the meters and the readings look right compared month to month to month and year to year. For the month, we were 2.2% less than we were last year, but all of a sudden we're almost 4% less TVA, which again, the losses made up the difference down here. So all the numbers track properly. Any questions about the August TVA report? Any questions? All right, let's move on then to the budgets. We'll look at the July budget to begin with. Wrong chart, that was rare case. Now, while we're up here, this is, which I show occasionally what they talked about. We're at 5.574. He showed $5.575,000 off. I don't have it updated from last time you saw because it comes out, what, about the 10th of the month, 8th of the month? I had that up here in case somebody wanted to look at it. All right, so we're looking at the July budget. Our actual cash position in July was $86,000 positive. We had budgeted to be $2,400 positive. Year to date's going to be the same. There was nothing in the total budget that I saw that jumped out at me that I thought was worth making any notes over. Let me look again just to make sure. One thing that I always look at when you look at why the cash is so much different between budget and actual. If you look at it, I missed the budgeted income by $77,000. It was less than I thought it would be. But TVA was $118,000 less. And so that made up about $47,000, that difference right there. It did the same thing in August when we look at it. So, other than that, there's nothing unusual. Did y'all see anything in the July budget?
I did.
Okay, if not, I'm going to do a paper clip. We'll pull up the August budget. It's just like TVA, repeat, rinse, and repeat. One thing that really helps us a lot in our cash flow, during this power cost, is the fact that we've gone to this higher customer charge and lower rates. So we're recovering our costs more, fixed costs as we should. And I said 4 or 5 years ago, that's going to kind of keep this out of our cash flow. And you're seeing it start to smooth out some. So here's the August budget. We ended up at a positive $78,000. We thought we'd be negative $76,000, and I'll address that in just a minute. Year to date, positive 164 compared to minus 74. So what drove that big difference again? If you look at what our actual revenues was, we missed this by $189,000. Missed TVA by $286,000. That was that's a $96,000 gain right there on the first page. You know why we was off? That accounts for $96,000, that difference right there. Then we had a couple of big expenditures we did not make. Where was that at? Oh, and there's no fuel in this month. We didn't get see the fuel bill yet. There was no fuel in this month. I thought there was something I wanted to pull out. Oh, equipment maintenance 20. Right here. I had some things budgeted for August, like flywheel maintenance, the big generator in the back, and I've been trying to get Tom Spire to come do that, and a few other things that just hadn't been done yet. And so that was $29,000 difference there. That was the only thing that really jumped out. Is there any questions about the August budget numbers?
The trucks and everything that runs smooth, or maintenance on an area.
On the trucks?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, well, we've replenished our fleet in the last couple of years. Now, yes, we do have some, breakages and things like that. You'll see some big numbers. Well, it's like this month, we had to put 4 new tires on a truck.
We're not getting ready to buy a new truck or anything, we're all.
No, we're in good shape. We did take delivery of the new Traverse that was budgeted. It came in under budget. It's sitting out here. Thursday at 1 o'clock, I'm having a bid opening for the 2008 Envoy. The last one, I think, it's brought a bid up here. He bought the last 3 and paid top dollar for one.
Who did?
The last one.
Oh,
The older gentleman, I forget his name, y'all know him, he's a long time resident. He paid top dollar, he paid almost what Kevin Lou up for person to person. And hopefully he'll do the same on this. If you look up this one on Kelly's and on Edmonds, it's real low mileage. It's like 94,000 miles for a 12, 13-year-old vehicle, about $6,200. And so I put a reserve of $5,000 on it, just I don't want somebody come in low ball and walk away with it. They don't know what the reserve is, but I've got it on there. I told them the paper's a reserve, not much. So hopefully the last one come in, and Charles Morris came up looking for something for his daughter today. He and I stood and talked a few minutes. So we may end up 2 bids. So, but yeah, you'll see some big numbers here for the big trucks sometimes. If they have a main pinion gear that should break, that's a big number. If the hydraulics pump goes out, it's a big number. But for the regular fleet, the half tons and such as that, brakes, just regular stuff. But if you look at how new these vehicles are, we're in pretty good shape. Now, this truck, which truck is that? This one here, I think. We're still running it. It's kind of a parts truck. We run back and forth and taking stuff out in the field and back. If we need to put some money to good use next year, I may do that. We'll take one of these older trucks, move it into that position, and the newer truck will go into service regularly. So there's no questions about the August budget. I'd ask for a motion to approve the July and August financials.
Got a motion by Ms. Mary and seconded by Christie. All in favor say aye. Motion carries. We'll move along to the drug policy.
Okay, we talked several months ago about updating our drug policy, and we did that. If you look at the back of this proposed policy, we first passed it in 2000. When I came here, we did some revisions to it. We did some bigger revisions this time, because we are now not only we've got 8 CDL drivers and 10 non-CDL drivers, like Kathy and I are non-CDL. CDL drivers fall under the Federal Motor Highway Carriers Act with one set of testing and so forth. And then the non-CDLs now fall on the Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace, which we hadn't followed before formally. And so we, working with the company, Work Care Resources out of Dyersburg, they came in finally after delayed by COVID 2 weeks ago, last week?
16th.
16th. And we had 4 training sessions with them so that management supervisors had sit through different training than regular employees for various reasons. So we had 4 different sessions and 1 day with her. And now that everyone's been trained so they understand what's expected of them, both through the Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace program and the Federal Motor Highway Carrier, the CDL drivers, we can now put this policy in place. We had to get them trained before we did this. And so the policy is pretty much rewritten from the old policy we had, but it just lays out what's expected of our employees at work and the test procedure, the panel that will be tested against, and so forth. The company in Dyersburg helped us formulate this, so we had all the i's dotted, t's crossed. Are you familiar with them? Okay. Anyway, so that's, I hope you've had a chance to read it. I propose it as a policy and ask y'all to approve it tonight. We'll give it out to the employees tomorrow or the next day, whatever.
So will this company come and just randomly drug test?
Yes, we have all that set up. Now, we've been doing the CDL drivers for January of last year, this year. This year. The federal government passed a new requirement, it's called a clearinghouse. So all CDL drivers have to be registered in this national clearinghouse. So if anything hits their record, it becomes part of the national database. And that is searchable by people with access to it. So you can't run and hide if you had something to hit you on the CDLs. And because of that, that's what kind of stimulated a lot of this, the fact that we need to update it. So we've been working with Work Care Resources, and we'll talk more about them in just a minute in a different avenue. But they do most all the drug testing utilities in West Tennessee, plus they handle hundreds of commercial accounts like Marvin Door and Earnco and the big accounts for drug testing. So we've used them, and the way it works, we're set up, it's random drug selections, random employee selections. They do it with a computer program, not us. We've got 8 CDL drivers. We pull 4 at random every year, 1 quarter, for drug testing. And then in one of those quarters, we'll pull one, or they'll pull one for alcohol. So it could be Will's got his CDLs. He may get pulled for drug and alcohol at the same time. First 2 months we did it, Joey got pulled back to back. You know, it's just randomness. So we could have one person get tested 5 times, or 5 people being tested once. Strictly random. With a 10 non-CDL that's on the Tennessee Drug-Free Workplace Law, we're pulling 2 of them a quarter at random. And so we'll end up with 8 tests out of 10 a year. So pretty much cover the whole, the chances are, depending on how the randomness is, we'll cover the whole work base every year. So, and we'll talk some more in just a minute about what Work Care Resources does.
So do you make each one of them sign one of these if they
Yeah.
can't?
Yeah, it's not, they won't sign that. They'll sign a document that says they've received that, and we've gone over it and so forth.
So what is the cost of this?
The cost, well, if drug tests are $35, I think,
Per person?
per test. Does that sound right?
That's about right, 35, between 35, 45, depending on the number of tablets they tested for.
Right, and what they
Is
do,
this gonna be urine?
drug test is drugs and
No, is it a urine?
Urine.
yes,
Okay,
yes. And you see the panel on there
yeah.
with all the stuff. They can also do hair follicle and whatever else we need. Penny's our contact. They send her a list a few days before it's time, and she does not tell anybody till the morning of. And she'll say, all right, Kathy, Tim, y'all got pulled, go up there. So we'll drive up there, and they do the test. You have to wait.
So you have to drive to
To-
that.
They will come down here, but they'll charge us more to come down here.
Do you pay travel for an employee that has to go to Dartford?
No,
It's on
no,
company
it's on
time.
company time. In a
They
company
use our
time.
vehicle there, yeah.
Oh,
They
they
go your vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's They right. go in our, yeah. They're not gonna use their private.
No, and if we've got 3 going, all 3 ride at one time. And they stay there until they get results. You know, and the rules are such that, you know, if you show up there and you don't stay to get your results, it comes back as a negative, a positive, yeah. So I mean, it's real
Don't
rigid.
come back.
Well, yeah, don't bother coming back here, right? But the other document that goes with this is like 38 pages long for the federal CDL stuff, and almost that long for the non-CDL. So this is just our policy and incorporates the other 2. So, can I have a motion to get that
I
approved?
thought you had on premises, off premises, all of that about drugs, whether they were working or they were on their own time and all of that. And I didn't read it, but it's a lot of reading and putting it all together. Somebody walks into your office and says, Tim, I have a drug problem. Do you send them?
We refer them to a substance abuse professional, SAP,
Okay.
out of Jackson. If they voluntarily, before they're tested, say I've got a drug problem, we work with them over there.
Okay, and that's not, you,
But it's on their dime, their
It's on
time,
their dime.
and their dime, right.
Or do they get paid?
No, if they come in and say, I've got a drug problem.
so
Before
do you
they're,
terminate them?
not at that point, no. If they tell me up front, now I had the option to do that. But if they volunteered up front, then, you know, I think the general feeling and for most of the community and particularly the electrical community is that if they fess up to it and they've been a good employee, let's give them a chance to get over it, to go through substance abuse training. And we
So would they take PTO then for, I mean, their vacation?
yeah,
time?
they'd have to take vacation
Okay,
time,
that's
right.
what I was, okay.
And they have to pay for it. Now, our insurance covers so much.
And that's why I was asking, because I've been in companies where if you come in and say that I have a drug problem, then the company covers it all. And it's not, you know, so I just wondered how it was here.
But we have the SAP, it's
Some big ropes.
Employee Assistance Program, EAP, and the
If I
SAP
do
is
this slowly,
Substance
I'm
Abuse
trying to
Professional.
like a single.
The Substance Abuse Professionals, 2 or 3, in Jackson, there's one in particular that we've used that's highly recommended by the company that does the drug testing. And we have one employee recently that went up there and got his life in order, gone back to
And that's
work.
wonderful.
Gone back,
So
and that's
that's what
and
you
that's what
want.
it's for, right.
Yeah, that's why I was
Right.
saying, that's the whole purpose of
But,
it.
but,
Because anyone can come in and say, I have it, but are they penalized for trying to make
no.
corrective action?
Now, we want to reclaim them, make them, you know, we want them to be better person. I mean, I think all of us want everyone to do better person. Now, if I used Will a while ago, if I say, Will, you know, well, Penny says, go get tested, you got pulled today, he says, I got a problem, too late. That's too late. You still get tested. Then we decide what to do after the test results come back. You know, so, up to including termination, so. Any more questions about the drug policy?
You have a motion? Motion by Jim, second by Christie. All in favor say aye. Motion carries. I'll see you going, Tim.
Okay, a couple of you asked about the PPP loan program last month, and I think I said back then that, you know, we don't qualify in government. I did get with, boy at TMEPA, Elrod, Jeremy, and y'all met, he's a big heavyset guy. He's at all the training you've been to. He is an attorney by trade, but he's full-time. And the first thing he says, no, you can't. So I asked him, see, any municipals got it? You're not entitled to it. And I went ahead and got online and pulled it up and looked at a couple other independent laws, and they all said the same thing. So, good idea, but we don't qualify. The next thing is second round of community care funds. You remember about, 2 months ago? TV rolled out $2 million. We got 10,000 of it that we matched and presented to the Methodist Church, and we'll talk about where they're at today along with some other stuff. That 10,000 that we funded them had to be unmatched to TVA's 10. It had to be new money. We're recovering that ourselves through the roundup program, so it's really not in the long run costing us anything out of our checkbook. But we get an instant match, 2-for-1 for TVA. And so they come out with a second round, effective October 1st. I did call Liz, said, would you be willing to take on this additional load for another 20,000? She said she sure would. It's been very helpful to the community. So she's willing to do it. If this board's willing to fund another 10,000, that TV will match with their 10,000. You'll see it, I think you probably saw in the report, to date, the church has already paid out $11,000 in community cares funds, which pretty much covered our first donation. It ain't touched TVAs yet. So it's been very helpful to our consumers. So I would ask the board, first off, any questions? The same program we had last time.
I don't know. I'm asking this because a few days ago, so I'm gonna call you. Does this help with rental assistance deposits? If you're home, you lost your house, you sleeping in your car,
I think it just passed due bills.
it
It
just,
doesn't pay the late fee, it doesn't pay the reconnect fee.
okay, I'm
The
not saying
community
that.
care does that. Now, the other,
Community cares will pay for rent.
no.
Not, no, not.
Now, there's Samaritan program back, Keith, you know?
Do what now?
With the Samaritan program pay for somebody's rent?
Okay.
Real short term, is the way I understand
This is
Someone
TBA, so
called
it's
me,
strictly
They're
electricity.
sleeping in their car, they were out of work, they lost their apartment, their rent, because they can't pay anything.
Right.
I think they possibly had gotten back to a job, but they had that span of time where they lost everything,
Mhm.
and they didn't have anything. And of course, I sent them to Delta, but I was wondering if they pay those kind of things, because for a lot of people, there's a possibility that as the pandemic carries on, they just lost jobs, and they're homeless now, because they've gotten to eviction notices now. You know, you have to have a certain amount of time, but that's where they're getting now, and none of this helps them.
it. Send them to the Methodist church.
Methodist Church, okay,
Because as Kathy pointed out, you know, this has to do with TVA with electricity.
okay.
It's not for other
So
things.
it's strictly for
Electricity.
Electricity, right,
But-
not water, not gas,
Not-
none of that. It's
just electricity.
Now, the other program that the Baptist Church had for years is the Roundup program. That's just for electricity too. But the Samaritan program, and you'll see over here, I think there was year to date, they put in like 5,500 on the Samaritan program, spent that much. 5,200 on the Roundup, and then 11,000 for the community care, the COVID part of it. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll give that update in a minute. But I've asked the board to consider funding another $10,000. We get a 2-for-1 match from TVA. We get that money back in the long run. She's more than glad to take on the additional burden. It's worked very well.
Good program. Motion by Christie and second by Jim. All in favor say aye. All right, done deal.
All right, well, they've already filled out some different paperwork this time. They had to prove they were nonprofit and something else. They've already filled it out. I'll send that in tomorrow. COVID-19 update. I won't go through all the numbers out there in your agenda. Remember, we didn't cut off end of March, any of April, none of May. We started cutting off in June and July. And so year to date, with all those people we didn't cut off that we finally did in June and July, and we're still running regular cutoffs now, I really thought we'd probably had a $25,000, $30,000 write-off. As it turns out, $739 is all
That's right.
I'm tickled to death with what the ladies have done on the front counter and the fact that y'all allowed us to do some things with this. The Community Cares Fund, we talk about Delta Minute, all those things help tremendously. Because if you look how much money, it's $75,000 between the two of them that they put in there. So I've been tickled to death. No one has defaulted on their repayment agreements yet. Everybody's still paying those. I think a couple of them come and just paid it off, you know. Tickled with that. So I did tell you that last month that Sunrise had let somebody live in an apartment. They left on a $200 bill. We transferred that to their home office and they haven't even paid it. So I'm tickled to death with that. Delta so far has given out about $48,000. How much is strictly COVID and how much is normal, I don't know. Not broken down. First Baptist Church, $11,600 from the Community Cares Fund, $5,300 from Roundup, $5,500 from the Samaritan Fund. Total of $22,500. So that's a great program too. We're lucky to have both those programs in the community here. part of the update, I want to talk about our COVID-19 rules of conduct that we discussed last month. And I told you last month that we were following the Tennessee Department of Health guidelines for essential workers, and which is correct. And they've actually changed since then. Before it was a household contact. Once your spouse got better for 24 hours, 3 or 4 days into it, you started counting 14 days. In the last 6 weeks, they've gone to, you got to be off the full 10 days they're off plus 14. So he made it longer. So when I was talking with Atlanta Orchard, who did our drug stuff up here, the Work Care Resources offers, I didn't realize this, they offer a full range of health care, occupational health services, like our drug testing, psychological stuff, health checks, all kind of stuff. If you go on the website and look at it. But once this pandemic started, they have a medical director on staff and three nurses of some level. And they started thinking about, we need to be able to answer our customers' questions about this. So they got so many customers that needed help. And so their staff digs down into the bowels of all these rules and regulations every day, looking at updates and such as that. So when I explained to Atlanta that day that we was following Department of Health guidelines, that 14 days plus the isolation, she said, for essential workers, she said that's correct. That's what the rules state. But she said what they found out in Dyersburg with the research they did, if you dig down deep in the bowels of the CEC, there's an additional classification called critical infrastructure. And I think, is that what they call what y'all do, Christy? Critical infrastructure?
I never have heard that term.
Well, they included like gas, water, railroad, utilities, those kind of things. That's what was in there.
I don't think ours is like
Okay. And she said, for the most part, essential workers is right, but for the critical infrastructure, and I had never seen that in all the research I did.
we're essential. Now, the surgeons may be critical.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Well, so with critical infrastructure, the way it's defined there is, in addition to essential workers, critical infrastructure, the critical infrastructure category, the CDC guidelines for the employees working for us, critical infrastructure, is very similar to what you said y'all were doing. Back to work pretty quick. So I think it mimics the medical field
Yeah,
under the critical
we'll get on
infrastructure.
that.
Yeah, well, that's what we like to do too. But under the other rules, just essential worker, we're not allowed to. But anyway, now she's sent me the link and I can find this. Let me tell you what it does. 'Cause I really want to start using this critical infrastructure guideline. So under that guideline, if an employee is exposed to a confirmed COVID-19 case, whether it's in-house, household contact, or non-household contact, as long as that employee remains asymptomatic and enters into a monitoring program,
Just temperature taken and.
a bunch of stuff, then they come back to work. Now, if they start showing signs, you send them home. You send them out. And we'll go back, I'll go over what this monitoring stuff is, according to CDC. So it basically can get us back the next day or the day after, rather than 14 or 24 days. And that's the reason I want to do this.
Does every employee here every day have their temperature taken?
Nope, we do not.
You need to,
We keep a log of that every day.
Do you?
you have to, you really need to.
Supposed to, I think.
Well-
I think you're supposed to do, we do, because we do. Nobody can walk in our building and have a temperature check.
Mhm.
Employee, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, our doctors are lined up out there at 6 o'clock in the morning to get their temperature taken.
We bought a thermometer, but unless someone thinks they're running a temperature, we don't. The guideline says should, not shall, and that's what the guideline
You
says.
should.
So,
Just to cover your tracks. Huh?
yeah.
Mhm.
So, in order to fall on the monitoring program, this is what has to happen. Sorry. Pre-screen. So, I've been exposed. I'm asymptomatic. I'm going to come back to work. the next day. Pre-screen, when I walk in, they take my temperature. I have to wear a face mask all day, unless I'm back in my room, the door shut, or she's in her room with the door shut. But if somebody needs to come in, get a face mask up. We've got the thermometer. I went to your office and got a copy of the screening that Pam does, that I've signed at your place, brought it back, modified it for our use. It says pretty much the same thing, except I don't ask them to be out of the country in the last 2 months, because no one goes out of the country and works here. Well, I would know if it went out of the country. So we can do the pre-screening. Regular monitoring. As long as the employee does not have a temperature or symptoms, they should self-monitor under the supervision of the company's occupational health staff. We don't have an occupational health staff. Work Care Resources offers that oversight, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. They got to wear a mask at all times while in the workplace. They said should wear a mask for the 14 days. They got to wear it 14 days. Again, if they're off by themselves and open or whatever, mask.
Like the guys in the back, do they wear masks?
They do when if they have to get huddled together, unless they're outside both in a hot day at the base of a pole, and the CDC allows exception for that. Yeah, but they not everybody up here wears a mask when they're supposed to.
Okay.
Our customers come in, we ask them to wear a mask. We hadn't run anybody off that didn't. I don't know if anybody's come in without a mask or
Yeah,
not.
we had a couple, but some of them asked or they had their, putting their shirt.
Most people are wearing masks.
They
Yeah,
are.
most of, yeah.
And our ladies that see them at the front counter, now if no one's up there, they may, like you, pull it down.
Correct.
Unless I walk up there, or Kathy, if somebody gets in that 6-7 foot,
Okay.
we'll put it back up. And so they're real careful with that.
Okay, good.
So, wear the mask, social distance, maintain 6 foot as long as they can, where it's practical, and as long as your work duties permit. Again, it takes 2 men at the butt of a pole to set a pole. Can't be 6 foot apart and do that. Disinfect and clean work surfaces. We do that regularly during the day. And then Sheila comes in at night and does the whole building. And then if the employee starts having symptoms, of course, he goes home immediately. We send him to get tested, go see his doctor, go from there. So, again, this can work, the monitoring, but it has to be under the health or in on-staff nursing or whatever. We don't have that. So, Atlanta said they started this, and a lot of the utilities participate. If I got exposed, first thing I would do, if we use their services, and it's $65 for an employee who uses it. It's not 65 times 18 employees, just if someone thinks they're exposed. I would call the nurse in Dyersburg, make an appointment, go see her. And she'd do analysis, all the assessments, take temperature and stuff, and sit down and talk about the exposure and how he feels. Makes whatever analysis she can. And based upon how that conversation goes, then if she checks his vitals and everything, she'll tell him either go home quarantine right now, go see your personal care physician for other advice, or return to work on this 14-day monitoring by the
Did she give
CDC.
you a COVID test?
No, because you're asymptomatic. They don't test you. You're asymptomatic. And that's what the CDC says no.
Yeah, they changed that, that's right.
Well, okay, so, like at Baptist, they have nurses that are working until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, just answering questions, answering calls. It's a hotline.
Mhm.
But if you think you've been exposed, if you want to ask them, or if you've been tested there, they can give you results. But, I don't know what it would do. It's $65 per employee.
No, only if I got sick and made the call, then they charge the company $65. If no one got sick, no charge.
Then what if Kathy got sick the next day? Would they charge again? Or?
It's per employee that seeks their monitoring.
That's right, okay.
Right.
But all they would actually be doing is just taking your temperature and, why couldn't you just have somebody here take everyone's temperature in the morning, and then you could just call your primary care, couldn't you?
Well,
And ask them, I mean, instead of calling,
yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. And in we case we could do that. Since they have these nurses on staff, and the lady I talked to, Stephanie Coleman, has a Master of Science in Nursing and Adult. She's an NPC, Adult Nurse Practitioner, and a Family Nurse Practitioner. So they're all, credentialed up. It's not some flunkies like me or Penny trying to take it. The monitoring they perform is initial assessment. Then if they say go back to work, they stay in contact with the employee. And after 14 days, let me get this right here, because anytime during the 14 days, the employee starts having symptoms, immediately send them home, send them to the doctor, send them to get tested, and stay until you get cleared. That's a part of it. But they do follow through with this employee, the monitoring part of it. After the 14 days of monitoring, the person's still asymptomatic. They call back up there and talk to the nurse. She reviews the history of what he's been doing for the last 14 days, and hopefully people will be honest about it. And based on that conversation, she'll either say you need to continue monitoring, or we'll send you not a release to work, but all clear or whatever. And so that's what the $65 puts their professional skills in play instead of mine. Plus, it takes my non-professional opinion over what I think you should do, or you should do, off the table. It's the professionals decide that. And we can get them back to work in a couple of days as long as they're being monitored. And that's the reason, unless y'all say otherwise, I really want to utilize these people. May not cost us anything, may not have anybody that's exposed.
So if someone is exposed and they're asymptomatic and they come to work and they keep wearing their mask, will you let the other employees know that person has been?
Absolutely, that's part of it, yeah. I mean, we let them know that when we had the 2 or 3 that right now, we told them, so-and-so's been exposed. So everyone, there's no secrets up here, everybody knows, so.
But you know what always happens during that too, when somebody says they've been exposed, and that person is treated like they got leprosy, because everybody's around them, they don't want to be around.
yeah, it's darn, no, but they don't, we're not allowed to say the name who was exposed.
Well, in this community here, if it's 18, everybody knows.
I think somebody needs to be in charge of taking everybody's temperature when they walk in that door in the morning. It's not a big deal for
Well, we take everybody's temperature, and anybody that walks in there for a fingerprint gets a temperature.
And you need to.
And they wear a mask.
Absolutely. I think our temperature needs to be taken every morning. How many employees do we have?
18.
It's nothing. It's
Well,
nothing.
That's the first thing I do.
Yes.
Or Zell.
As a matter of fact, like you said, any place else you go, if you're entering into a building, they're taking your temperature.
Absolutely.
And some of them are asking you the questions, but they're definitely shooting down with the temperature.
And we have some come in that might be near 100. And we're like, are you sure okay? What's going on? He goes, man, it was so hot outside. I'm like, okay, go back and sit in your car.
Yeah.
Come back in 10 minutes later and take your temperature.
Right. That's what they do at Starter.
Is that right?
They make them go sit outside or somewhere just to relax and cool off a little bit. They may have been out working in the yard or something, yeah. But I definitely think that we need to have everyone's temperature taken. Somebody, you just maybe take turns, but whoever's gonna just come in and buzz your head with the
That's what
thermometer.
all we do.
Yeah,
Have your sheet, boop, 99, 97.8. That's what we do.
that's a good
Everybody does their
idea.
own.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would give out a high dollar thermometer to 7 or 8 linemen back there to play with.
They're not gonna play with it. They're adults. They shouldn't play
Come on,
with
it
it.
costs $60, $50.
We'll start doing that.
I think you need to. And yeah, and just
We
log
do.
it. I just think that's, talking about covering yourself, that's just showing.
Well, like I
respect
say,
for everybody.
they're supposed to be adults. We trust them to tell us. And we treat them like adults. And
Have you had anybody that's had it?
that's good.
That's great.
No, we've had a couple exposed that had quarantine, but never got it. So, okay, again, unless y'all say no, I'm gonna utilize these people. I think it puts a professional touch back on it. It takes my judgment out of it too. So,
Yeah,
We don't need a motion on that.
no, that's not a motion. We don't need that.
I think that'd be a good thing.
Okay, the last thing in the discussion items is next month's board meeting. You know, we've been doing our tape recorded on the computer, posted to the website since March, Governor Lee's order. Well, last month he came out with EO 60, Executive Order 60 said that starting October 1 through October 28th, meetings that are done electronically have to have live video and or audio. Well, that presents a problem to us. There's no problem to do this and put it on the website within 3 days. To do the live stuff, I don't know if I can use that for the webcast at the same time we're doing this. And I'm not comfortable thinking if I did that, as many of these buttons ain't down here, that I may interrupt a live cast because we're trying to change screens. So rather than having to possibly buy a second laptop or a video camera or whatever to sit back here, what I'd ask of the board, everybody's been here for the last 2 or 3 meetings. Instead of having an electronic meeting in October, I would ask that everyone do show up. We're not required to do it if we're not having the electronic meeting. That foregoes the need to have the live and maybe spending $1,200 for the laptop. Now the governor may extend this after October. He may say, you know, for the next 5 years do it. At that point, we'll have to go back and really get this cash. But as long as we're not having the electronic meeting, we don't have to do the live audio or video. So what I'd ask for y'all to do is next month, you know, as long as we got 3, we have a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just keep doing what we're doing.
That's why
Okay.
I started.
Well, I'm not gonna be here tonight, but that computer will do everything you need and change as many buttons down as the administrator if you're doing a Zoom meeting or a webcast. About 4 times a week I'm in something where they're showing screens, doing training, you're right up there, and anybody that you want to see is in the whole picture. So I don't have to do it all, but I know it's possible because I'm in on it.
I'm sure that
And you won't have to purchase anything else. My laptop, your laptop, anybody's regular laptops does this. Matter of fact, our pastor is doing it for our Bible study on Wednesday nights. And everybody's there, and she's showing her slides and her film. So, and as I said, unless you do it continuously, Zoom is free.
well, I'm sure to do it. I just don't want to trust my abilities. And for this 1 month, I mean, it's,
Well, we'll have a quorum, so
Okay.
let's just plan on doing what we've been doing.
you made the comment. I'll get off track here. LLGNW had one of their public Zoom meetings over their TVA, leaving TVA stuff, and had 20-something board members, city council on there, and someone hacked in, was running cartoons on it, and so was.
Well, you know that.
I mean, I'm just commenting that's saying that to us.
That can happen.
They had all kinds of stuff, so
I was on my way here and somebody had hacked into a medical, I know Lakeside is a part of it a few minutes ago where the whole computer shut down. So, you know, so it can, happen.
it can happen, yeah. So we'll just all put on meeting here next time. I'll get my hammer
Christie, I mean,
out.
I didn't, I just.
Chris, don't worry
I
about
just have a commitment to be somewhere And thought I could call in, I didn't know it was this.
Leave it alone, Christie, I'll take care.
Are you sure?
Yes, it fell off last week.
Evelyn did.
All you did was bump it. Evelyn knocked it off last week. She leaned back like that. We was all spread out.
Sorry.
All right, information items, all the rates adjusted and so forth, but there's gonna be, less impact this month than, the month before. That's all the information items I have. Anything else as far as action items we need to discuss? If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Christian, second by Jim. We adjourn.
All right.